It's easy to assume that medieval people slept in big, comfy beds like we do today. After all, we tend to think of the medieval period as a time of knights and royalty. And when we imagine those figures, we usually picture them lounging around on big, soft beds. But the reality was actually quite different. In this video, we're going to explore how medieval people really slept. From the materials used to make their beds to the position they slept in, there's a lot to cover. So let's get started. For most of history, wood was the primary material used for making beds. This was true during the medieval period as well. However, not just any type of wood would do. The most popular type of wood used for making beds during this time was oak. Oak was a very strong and durable material that could last for many years. In addition, it had a pleasant smell that made it more resistant to pests such as moths and beetles. Another benefit of using oak was that it was relatively easy to work with. This meant that even a relatively unskilled carpenter could make a decent quality bed frame with the right tools. While the wealthy could afford fancier materials like iron and brass for their bed frames, these were much less common. Iron and brass beds were not only more expensive, but they were also more susceptible to rust and corrosion. This made them a less ideal option for a bed frame, especially considering the amount of moisture present in a bedroom. Despite these drawbacks, some wealthier individuals did opt for metal beds as they were seen as a status symbol. These beds were often ornately decorated and served to show off the owner's wealth. Regardless of what material the bed frame was made of, it was usually pretty simple in design. There were no fancy headboards or footboards, just a basic frame that supported the mattress. Speaking of mattresses, they were typically made of straw or hay. This may sound a bit uncomfortable to us today, but it was actually quite common for people to sleep on straw mattresses during the Middle Ages. Straw was a readily available material that could be easily replaced if it got dirty or infested with pests. It was also relatively cheap, which made it accessible to people of all social classes. In addition to straw, people also used a variety of other materials for their mattresses, including moss, leaves, wool, feathers, and down. These materials were typically layered on top of the straw to provide a more comfortable surface to sleep on. For the very wealthy, mattresses made of wool or horsehair were a real luxury. These materials were much more comfortable than straw and could last for many years. However, they were also much more expensive, so only the richest people could afford them. Finally, let's discuss the position people slept in during the Middle Ages. As a kid, you were probably told to sleep on your side with your arms by your side. However, during the Middle Ages, it was much more common for people to sleep on their stomachs. This position was preferred because it allowed people to breathe easier, especially in the colder months when they were bundled up in heavy clothing and blankets. In addition, sleeping on one's stomach helped to prevent bed sores, which were a common problem for people who were confined to bed for long periods of time. Of course, there were exceptions to this rule, and many people, especially women, continued to sleep on their sides. As you can see, medieval people did not sleep in the same way that we do today. They slept on much harder surfaces and used materials that may seem strange to us now. In addition, they preferred to sleep on their stomachs rather than their backs or sides. While some of these practices may seem uncomfortable, they were actually quite common during the Middle Ages and were often seen as a status symbol. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and join us for more. Until next time.